And then the protocol for tonight is that the stick, when we say tuku wati te rākau ki a koe, when you got the stick, then you got the say. You got no stick, got no say, wait for the stick. And so the stick will come around. And this is about, gathering information. It's about learning and understanding, because it's only through knowledge and understanding that people can make good decisions and determine for themselves what their feelings are and what their thinking is all about. So, tuku atu ki a rātou.
Hi, my name is Brad. My mountain is the Rocky Mountains. My river is the Bull River. I'm married. I have 3 little boys. And first time I've been out of North America, so it's very nice to visit your country.
My name is Luke. I come from Montana, the Rocky Mountains, which looks a lot like this. My mountain is the Swan Mountain. My lake, the river, the Swan River and Swan Lake. And it's very nice to be in your country. Thank you.
Kia ora. Tihai Moriora, ko Kaubeka, toku Mona, ko Tutakuri, toku Awa, ko Pukitapu, taku tu Rangawaiwai, no Ahreiri ki Otatra, noho Ana, ko Alex Johansson, taku no Tenakoto, Tenakoto kato.
I can't say that. My name's Craig Rice. That I come from Calgary, Alberta. That also my mountains are the Rocky Mountains. Rivers the Bull River. That I have 2 children, and they are off at college now. I am awfully pleased to be here. This is actually my 4th trip, and I'm pleased to be out here. I'm meeting all the people here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. This is my first time out here from Canada as well. My country is Canada, and my mountains are my mountain's Ram Mountain, and my river is North Saskatchewan River. My wife's name is Tanya. I have a son named Nolan, and my name is Ken. Great.
Kia ora. My mountain is Mount Washington in Vancouver Island in British Columbia. My river is the Fraser River, just outside of Vancouver. I have a wife and 4 daughters, so I'd be happy to offer opportunities to I am looking for help on that. My name is Alex Ferguson, and it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Mike Yates. I live in Texas, but I'm from England, so my mountain is the green hills of the Chiltern Hills in the south of England. My river, the River Thames. My wife and I have been married for 20 years, but we were never lucky enough to have kids. And it's a great honour to be here in this place in New Zealand.
Hawa, tuku atu te rākau ki a koutou.
Do you have any particular presentation?
Can I sit or stand, or?
You can sing.
But there'll be two spokesmen if you wish, myself and also my colleague here, Alex. Okay. Now, right, we came prepared to talk about our program, talk about how we conduct ourselves, talk about the technical side of this, because what we're starting is an onshore exploration program. We felt it would be a good start to lay the foundation as to what the pieces are of that. Okay. But I have to apologize. I have a bit of a speech impediment. Sometimes I'll get stuck, and then sometimes she'll just kind of poke me to speed me along. So. Right, that we have stuff to talk to. We have a presentation materials. We aren't putting up a slideshow or anything like that. We have stuff to pass out, right? But then we would like to do that. We figured that it's through. It's essentially pamphlets and papers that we prepared especially for these. Okay, that will help us to talk to what we are, and people can see it, and people can probably and people should be better able to. Know what we're talking about, and that could take an hour, it could take a bit. I don't know how we choose to do this. I currently don't have the stick, so no, I better probably be talking.
You got it now, metaphorically.
Yes. That we really enjoy, that we really want to convey the sense that we want to be here, we want to talk, we want to field questions, we want to be a part of this, we want everybody here to be a part of this and to actually understand what it is that we are trying to do. Okay? This, I would hope, is the start of several conversations, several of these type of sessions, but onwards. But that's okay, we could start with that and kind of go along with that for a bit. If that's right, that is somehow we'd like to do it to start with. Would I want to say anything else?
Sure. There's a number of people that we brought with us today that in our business are experts in various aspects of what we do. And we have some materials to present, but given the time, some of the topics and questions are pretty detailed. So what we would like to do is kind of at least explain from a fairly high level, and then of course more than happy to dive into detail on any aspect or any questions, either as much time as we have tonight or next time or future meetings. So if that's okay, I'll just jump right in, and I'm going to ask the other Alex, there's two Alexes in the front, to maybe talk a little bit about the background of the project, how we came to be here, and what the structure of that is. If Alex, you can jump in and maybe walk through that a little bit.
Like that, can I interject? I apologize. Right, what we hope is that through this first conversation to get to all of you, is that this is what we would say. That we would certainly hope you come away with a basic understanding. Okay? And then what our intent is, and when we've been speaking with Penny and also yourself, Owen, or Ronald as well, is that we're here almost monthly. Okay. We want to continue to talk. We want to continue to follow up on the questions, all these things, right? So that we're trying to do this, right? We start off with the general foundation, understand what the concerns are, right? Yes, throughout the course of this, we will be talking to fracking. Okay, absolutely. And then as we start to get a sense of things, we will come back and talk to specifics again, right? And then we'll come back again, and then we'll come back again. You'll probably be tired of talking to us, I hope. And you'll probably be tired of actually feeding us, right? And on. But the intent is to start the conversation, start a dialogue now. Start at this level and start to cut into it, right? Cut in pieces. I don't think we're going to solve all the world's I don't think we're going to solve all the world's problems like that in 2 hours. Absolutely not. Okay. But right, that will certainly get a good start on what the questions are. Okay. All right. So if that's right. So like that, I'll try to quit stepping and then I'll pass it over to my colleague Alexander.
Thanks, Greg. So what I'll do is give you a brief overview of the project, but I think I'll just start way back. The government has allotted certain areas for prospecting to certain...
Could you sort of come over this way, because there's a lot of people behind you as well?
Sorry.
So if you just come over here by the doorway and then...
All right. Is it better? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the project. But starting way back, the New Zealand government has certain exploration blocks that they put up for offer, and exploration companies bid for the right to explore in those areas. The East Coast Basin has certain blocks, and Tag Oil has the right to explore several of those blocks, and we entered into a joint agreement with Apache out of Canada, and that's why you see an amalgamation of Tag Oil people and Apache explorers. So the exploration project is divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 is there will be 65 kilometres of seismic shot in the southern permit, which is down near Dannyburg. So the southern permit goes from Napier right down towards Pongaroa. And there'll be 65 kilometres of seismic shot in the northern permit, which is around this area, and the northern permit goes from Tapuia Springs right down towards Gisborne. Once that seismic has been acquired and interpreted, then we plan to drill 4 wells. There'll be 2 wells drilled in the northern permit and 2 wells drilled in the southern permit. That's phase 1, and phase 1 should take about a year. That part of the project should be finished by early 2013, and from that we gauge whether it's successful. If it is, we continue to phase 2. If it's not successful, then we tidy up everything we've done and we exit the area. So phase 2, we'll get some ideas of where we're going from phase 1. So phase 2 will be a series of 3D seismic being shot and 2 horizontal wells drilled. They might be both in the northern permit, both in the southern permit, but we'll get a good idea from phase 1 what we're doing there. So again, if there's success with phase 2, we progress to phase 3. If not, we exit the project. Phase 3 will be more 2D seismic shot and 4 wells drilled, and that's just to further explore the area with the 2D seismic and to get a better idea of what is going on. Again, if that is successful, we go into a development phase. If it's not, we exit the project. I'll talk a wee bit about the wells we propose to drill. They're up near Waitangi Hill. I don't know if anyone's been up there. There are oil seeps up there, and one of the first wells was drilled up there in the 1870s. And there have been quite a few wells drilled up there, maybe about 4. And so we propose to explore that area and try and further define where the oil is coming from, and try and have successes up there and produce the oil. So that is probably about 10 k's away from here, and the other area is Wainaramia, near the river Wainaramia Valley. Right, okay. Yeah. So that will be another area that we'll be exploring for a second well. In the southern permit, the wells we drilled, one at Boar Hill, which is west of Prongahill, and the other area is down near Waipariki, which is east of Dannyburg. I'd just like to hand over now. Yes,
Well,
Here, I'm gonna add on to this. Like that, to actually conduct an exploration program in this style is for several reasons, right? One is that right? It was just said that the first phase, which happens to be subseismic and also 4 wells, will go out until the end of 2012. Okay. And then if there is if that happens to be successful, then to step to phase 2. If that's successful, to step to phase 3. What to take away from it is this: it's somewhere between 3.5 years to 4 years. Okay, so it is actually quite a lengthy process. Like typically that, or I shouldn't say typically, but to essentially drill 10 wells and to shoot some seismic, right, can actually be done quite a bit faster, right? But because that this isn't an established oil and gas area, let's call it that it isn't experienced in it, there are a lot of what I will call concerns. By stretching it out, by actually coming out here, talking to people, explaining things, everything else, by putting steps into the process, right? That we treat that as critical a component to the success of the programs, as to actually going out and actually conducting the conducting the drilling programs. Okay. I think that's a key takeaway. It could take as long as 4 years to actually go to completion, to know whether there is a likelihood of a oil field. Okay, and throughout that it is a lot of talking, a lot of correspondence, a lot of teas, a lot of coming out to places such as these. We put that into these type of schedules on purpose, because that is only through that we actually gain the level of understanding, gain the trust, I hope, gain the working relationships that we're trying to achieve, instead of just speeding it through. Okay, by speeding it through, there's things that don't get talked to. There's things that could possibly not be done the best way, and we certainly hope to try to convey the sense that we are trying to do things that way, that and such, right? So thereby, by 3.5, 4 years to do this, right, we're trying to do that. That is a key thing to take away here. Okay. If we're to follow the exploration program itself, then we would talk to that generally the first step is to actually go out and to shoot some seismic. Okay. Here, I could also introduce the expertise we have here, maybe. Because, we have a person to talk to each thing. That if you're going to take your car in to be fixed, you're not going to take it to the, I don't know, like that another place, yeah, right? Okay, so if you want to understand, what it is, right, take it to the experts, right? I've had the misfortune of taking cars elsewhere. So. Here. Mike is a geophysical acquisition specialist. We'll call him that. His thing is that for our company and for the better part of his career, he has essentially been involved in shooting seismic programs all over the world. I don't know just how many countries you've been involved with.
I can try and give you a list.
Right. Okay. That over here, Ken, right? Ken is our surface construction fellow. He spent a lot of time up in northern Canada. He has a lot of I truly like to put the two of you together to talk stories. He can talk the same stories as you can. Okay. Drilling wise. Luke here is Luke is our driller. He'll talk to the process of it. He comes to us from Houston, and same thing again. If you're going to talk about drilling a well, it ought to be that guy, right? It's quite simple. Brad over there, right? Brad is the fellow that equips the well for testing. Okay, that and right, trying to actually get the flows. So if we are going to complete the wells, okay, right? He's the person, and that if we are going to frack the wells, he's also that person too. So, right, we'll probably end up talking to a Brad a lot, okay, that sense, right? But at the same sense, like that, there are specialists here to talk to each step of the process, okay? All right. So that in the course of things, right, we generally, to start a prospect, we talk to the geologist. Alexandra here, she that she picks on, or she picks out based on her local knowledge areas. Okay, we then start to set up a seismic program. After that, we come in construct. After that we come in drill, and after that we come in and test. Okay, so thereby, right, we'll follow that order if that's okay. All right. Right. Now, like that, right, we got stuff to pass out. I'd really like to do this now, because otherwise we're just talking in the air. Okay.
And just for everybody else, I won't pass the stick around, but I think it'd be, unless it's a burning question, if you write it down, because we'll have, because a lot of your questions could get answered in the presentation, and then so rather than ask the question, get an answer, and then the presentation comes and tells us again, if you write those questions down, I'd like to kind of pull this together and finish about 9 o'clock. Everyone happy with 9 o'clock? And so we'll have sort of question and time around about 8:15 through till 9. We can have a more open discussion. So, how's that sound? All right. I mean, like I said, there's going to be other meetings and other opportunities also. So once you've looked at their material, and then you look at your own material, and what Uncle Google is giving you, then you can be a lot more knowledgeable. Yes? And to follow up on that, like if there are questions put on paper, like that, right, we commit to answering. Okay? I'm sorry.
While Craig finishes handing out the papers here, to answer his question from before, since I left college at 21, I've been working in seismic acquisition. And I've worked in most of...
Could you kind of translate the seismic thing? Because...
All right, I'll start with... All right, so what is the seismic technique? Seismic is where we use sound energy, acoustic energy, that we create at the surface to create a map of what's beneath the surface. It's exactly the same technique as you'll have seen in sonograms or ultrasound surveys. We just use very much lower frequencies and very much bigger energy sources. So the idea is you introduce energy at the surface. On this program, we're going to be using small explosive charges buried at about a 15-meter depth. That creates a bang in the subsurface, and that energy then travels outwards. It reflects from changes in rock type in the subsurface, and we record it back at the surface of the Earth. And from that, we can create a map of what's going on beneath the surface. So that's the kind of work that I've been doing for nearly 25 years in North Africa, West Africa, Middle East, Far East, North America, South America, and now in New Zealand. So I'm very happy to be here. I love the science that I work with, and I like talking about it, so if I go on for too long, just shut me down. So there's two key parts to it, to the seismic. There's sources, which it says explosives, and receivers. When we lay out a seismic program, initially it starts out as just lines drawn on a map based on what we think we know about the geology beneath the ground. And so to follow along here, this is the reason I wanted one of these from Craig. So the picture in A just shows you an idea of where the historical wells have been, where the oil seeps are, and where the gas shows are. So we draw a series of straight lines on a map and think, this is where we want to go and look. We then have to turn that into a workable plan in terms of topography, habitation, because obviously we can't put lines straight through the middle of a village such as this. And what we try to do is to minimize our impact on the land. So we've bent lines around to avoid forestry. We've followed fences through the forests instead of having to cut lines so that people can access. We've avoided crossing rivers too many times. And that's why the lines that start out in A, perfectly straight, are now not quite straight when you get to B. So the lines when you see in B, we then send out a team of surveyors who use GPS technology, satellite positioning technology, to put stakes in the ground and record the positions of where we're going to put sources, which is where we're going to drill holes and load explosives, and where we're going to put receivers. And the receivers that we put out, just for fun, I thought I'd bring one with me, are like this. So we'll have a line, we want a string of either 3 or 6 of these, about every 20 meters along each line. And you can hear it rattles. Each one has a very, very sensitive spring and a coil in it. So as the ground moves, it creates a voltage, and we record that, and that's what we turn the sound signal back into so that we can actually record it and process it later. Obviously I can bring this on a plane, although it generated a lot of interest at security everywhere I went for the last day and a half, which is why I didn't bring any explosives. So I'm going to pass that around if you want to take a quick look. You can see the coil. Just it's suspended on it's copper wound, yeah, suspended on a very sensitive spring. So that's what a receiver looks like. For the sources, we'll be drilling a hole that's generally 15 meters deep, and it's about 3 inch, let's put that into centimeters, 7-8 centimeter diameter hole, which we drill with a drill that's either towed by a tractor or we move it with a helicopter, depending on the terrain. And at the bottom of that hole, we load a 2 or 2.5 kilo explosive charge with an electronic detonator on it. One of the beauties of the electronic detonator is you can't set it off with anything other than a seismic blaster. So if anybody wanted to go interfere with it, they can't set off the charge and they can't hurt themselves by setting it off with a battery, as you can with more conventional explosives. So the image in D shows it's just a schematic. You've got the explosive charge at the bottom of the hole on the left-hand side. The yellow are the ray paths of the energy traveling out, and then the red is reflecting back up from the subsurface. E is a picture actually taken on a project that we did in Canada a couple of years ago, where we've really had to work very hard on what we call low-impact seismic. And the low impact is just trying to make sure that any mark we leave on the ground disappears as soon as possible. So even where we can make a straight line, we don't. We actually make a line that meanders through the forest. It avoids the heaviest timbers for efficiency and to minimize the impact that we make. And so as soon as you start getting a very minimal level of regrowth on the ground, that line disappears. I believe, and Alex can back me up if I'm right, that we've now been deemed a zero impact activity in the forests of northern Canada after 1 year. Because I've been back to those lines, and unless you've got a GPS to take you to those points, you will not be able to find them. So that's the goal here, is we leave footprints, we leave nothing else behind us. F is a quick picture of what the process seismic line looks like when we're finished. So we've collected all of the data and we've taken it back to the processing center to create an image of the subsurface. And then G is how we can take the seismic image and turn it into a picture of what we believe the geology looks like. And that's what will be then used to locate the potential well locations for the subsequent phase of the exploration program. So we're going to take questions and do everything at the end, is that what I gather?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was all I had questions. Thank you very much.
Just pass this around.
Ah, yeah.
Okay, that's actually down at Boar Hill. That was acquired in 2009.
So this is a big print of what you see in the lower right, lower center in F. And what it is basically it's a plot of probably many hundreds, if not 1,000 or so, little wiggly lines where you shade in. If the line bends right, it's coloured in blue, and if it goes left, it's coloured in red. And when all of those little wiggles line up, that's like it's a focusing of energy that's gone down from the shot, echoed or reflected off the change in the subsurface, and then come back up. So as those align, that's what creates, need more hands, that's what creates these alignments. I'll hand this around in a second so that everybody can take a better look. That's what creates the alignments which represent the strata in the subsurface. So this is what will be created at the end of each 2D seismic line. And I'm going to hand this to you. So pass it around. Cool. Okay. That was it. Thank you very much.
So just to move along, I'm going to maybe ask Ken to get up and talk a little bit about some of our construction practices and techniques.
Once again, thanks for having us here. Craig was wrong about the stories that Owen and I might have the same ones, but I think what's more important is the tie. I do understand that, the tie to the land and how the environment's important to the people that are taking care of the land. So, of course, with construction, it's when you're starting to, you have to make some changes in order to have a trail to get to where your drilling rig is going to sit, and then you have to have a little area, maybe 80 meters by 100 meters is what we use in Canada quite often, where the actual drill rig sits that you have to have flat. So it sounds quite simple, make a trail, make a flat spot and put a rig, but there's a lot of things that we as Apache take into consideration when you're doing that. Is what is the effects of erosion on the land, how do you approach your trails going up hills, how it affects streams, stream crossings, what's it going to look like in the future if you get a well and you're going to be using that for many years. What's it going to look like if the well doesn't produce? How much weight are you putting on the ground? This is where it's very important to have these conversations, because local knowledge, the wintertime, when we talk about having to get our work done in Canada in the wintertime, that's because the ground's frozen and we can drive anywhere. Here in the wintertime, we get rain. So, we need that understanding to do our job right, and we need that from you people. So basically, the construction initially, aside from the seismic that Mike was speaking on, we need to get a trail up to where we're going to drill the well. We need a flat spot to drill it, and we need to take in a lot of things into consideration to do that. And then we have the surveyors, and they put it on a plan so people can look at it. And that's kind of my job, is to keep that understanding so that we make the best choices we can that are affecting the people in the area and the environmental concerns and those type of things. So that's basically all I have to say at this point. We certainly respect that tie to the land.
Could I have some handouts? Okay, so there's actually going to be 3 sets that we pass out. Okay.
I'll wait till Craig gets it passed out before I get into the actual process.
And you'll also see that we printed things on 2 sides. That's also to conserve. That's a good idea. Okay.
It's the responsible. Thank you.
I'll be talking about the drilling fundamentals side of this, right?
And I also got the other one, which is the column, or that as you're talking, I'll hand it.
Is that the mud one?
Okay.
In a nutshell, drilling is wellbore construction. So similar to what Ken just talked about. Instead of constructing the road and the pad, we're constructing the actual wellbore. Unlike the drilling location in the road, we don't get to see the wellbore, so we have to visualize the wellbore. It's a little bit different. You can see the tools that you use on surface, you can see the parts that you use, but we can't see downhole, so we've got instruments, we've got other things, kind of like Mike was using for seeing the rock. But as you can see, it takes a multi-functional team to put this prospect together. We need somebody to tell us where it's at. We need somebody to get us access in there. Once that's done, and they say, okay, it's about this deep. I think Craig mentioned it's, say, 1,500 to 2,500 meters. We'll put together a plan, and then I'll start asking the geologists and the geophysicists some more information, like how much pressure's down there. Very important to the driller. What type of rock is it? How we actually get the rock out of the ground to construct the wellbore can be kind of important as well. So now that he's passed these out, I'll kind of go through the basic fundamentals of wellbore construction. And I'll start with the casing detail. So if I move across the top, to the very center of the page, you've got the conductor. Now once Ken's got the wellbore location created, we'll bring in probably a small unit with some sort of an auger system on it. Once they tell us this is the location, it's the XY is right there. We'll dig a hole, maybe 30 meters, 40 meters deep, sometimes 60 meters deep. Again, it depends on a few different things. What's the ground like? What kind of water is there? Things like that. And we'll put a conductor in. A lot of times the conductor is nothing more than a steel culvert. Culvert. I don't know if that's the term you'd use over here, but yeah. Culvert. Okay. Generally, and in this case, that's probably 20-inch inside diameter. The culvert will be lowered down in the ground and cemented or grouted in. That little rig then moves away and we bring in a big drilling rig. So I say a big drilling rig. This particular case, it's not a big drilling rig. It's what we would call a truck-mounted rig. As we go around the world and drill wells, a 2,500 meter well is not what we consider a big, deep well. It's a fairly shallow well. Some wells are 8,000 meters. So that would be a much bigger, more significant rig. So this is what we call a 1,500 horsepower rig capable of drilling to, say, 12,000 feet, give or take. So it'll park itself over top of the conductor. In this case, we'll pick up a 17.5-inch bit, and we'll move to the next section, and we'll drill and case the surface section. So surface casing, in this particular case, is 13 3/8 casing, and this is set, somewhere around 500 meters. And the idea of the surface casing is to protect the groundwater and to give us then a conduit to nipple up blowout prevention equipment, commonly called BOPs, and then control the well from there. So this piece is usually drilled with fresh water and sweeps, as we call it. The sweeps tend to pull the rock out of the ground as you're drilling and collect it in tanks. We can then separate and circulate the water back down again. That's part of what the drilling rig does. It lowers the bit into the ground, turns the pipe to actually cut the rock or the dirt, so to speak. The mud pumps the fluid around the drill pipe, and the cuttings come back out, we catch it. The geologist will also be out there looking at the cuttings and telling us what we're drilling through. Other ways that we can kind of see downhole as we're drilling. So once the surface casing is drilled, surface hole is drilled, the surface casing is run, it's cemented back to surface as well. At that point, we'll what we call nipple up a wellhead. Some wellheads are welded on, some are flanged and bolted on. But once that's on and pressure tested, again, how much pressure is down there, I'll need to know that so I can design the equipment to handle the pressure. Once that's on, I'll nipple up a then riser up to a BOP, back up to what we call the bell nipple up in the rig. All that allows me to do is be able to shut the well at surface, control pressures if I need to, and then divert the flow over through my shale shakers, mud pits, back to the pumps, back down the hole again. So that moves us over to the intermediate section, and as you can see, we're continuing to get deeper, we're continuing to get smaller. So now I've got a 13 3/8 casing set. Now I go in the hole with a 12 1/4 inch bit. 12 1/4 inch bit drills down to about 2,000 meters. Pull that out of the hole. And again, we can look at the rocks that come out. We can take measurements, downhole logs, give us an idea of what kind of material we drilled to, tie that back into the seismic that Mike has shot earlier. And then I'll run a 9 5/8, or in this case, I think they're planning a 10 3/4 inch casing. The 10 3/4 inch casing is run in the hole, tied back to the surface wellhead, cemented back to surface again, and then we go do the process all over again for what they call the main wellbore, or in this case, the production hole. So again, we get slightly smaller. In this, I think in this particular case, we're going to drill. See, that's 10 3/4. We're going to drill a 9 7/8 hole, run 5 1/2 inch production casing, we call this. Typically, production casing is because that's where you stop, and if you have a producing well, you produce it. I'll hand that over to Brad here in a second. He can talk about what happens there. And again, 5 1/2 casing, run all the way to bottom again, cement it all the way back to surface, and then the pressure integrity built into the wellhead, all tied back into a system that contains the pressure yet allows pressure-controlled access into each section of that well. I won't go into too much great detail, but there's the drilling muds, which is kind of over here on the, I guess, the column right there, the drilling mud systems. The wells that are planned up here have 2 mud systems. The conductor and surface will use fresh water and sweeps. Once the surface casing is set, cemented, and we have this riser and the BOP on, we'll switch to a mineral oil-based mud, what we call synthetic oil-based mud. The reason that we use synthetic oil-based mud is that you have a lot of clay in the hole. Studying the offset wells, which is one of my main jobs as you go around the world. The other wells that were drilled up here had a lot of what we call hole stability problems, mostly caused by the shale or the clay swelling up. You take a piece of clay and put it in fresh water and it'll dissolve. You try to do that in a well bore and it dissolves and you get stuck and you have lots of drilling problems. If we use a synthetic oil-based mud, we can control that swelling of the shale and get a usable well bore that's drilled much more efficient. And again, it requires a closed loop system. We capture all the cuttings, haul them off to disposal. And then so it talks here briefly which sections use which kind of mud.
Ray, can you talk about tying back to surface?
Absolutely. When you say tying back to surface.
Well, all the strings are back to surface. And...
Well, yes, I did kind of mention that.
Sorry.
That's the function of the wellhead. Once you have the surface wellhead on, the intermediate has its own spool, and it nipples up to the surface wellhead. So if you go see an actual wellhead, you'll see it down at the very bottom. It's large, and it comes a little bit smaller, and it looks like a Christmas tree. And a lot of times you'll hear it called a Christmas tree because of the large size gets slightly smaller, and it stacks up like a Christmas tree. And again, each one is pressure tested and isolates each from its other neighbor inside it. And again, if there's questions once we get through it, I'll be happy to go into much more detail. And I can talk wellbore construction for hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if everybody turns to the back of the seismic one. Okay. Oh, if they do, 10 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to have to tell you my background. I'm a I'm a geologist, so thereby that I'm going to give you a little bit of, geology 101, let's call it, okay? So can I have on this particular, this poster, I'm showing across the top colored photographs, okay? And right, those happen to be colored photographs of rock, okay? And so, like that, right? When we study the rock, right, we will often cut it into very thin slices, and then after that, take a photograph of it, study it under a microscope, everything else. Okay. So, right, what I'm trying to convey to you with this poster is like that the sense of what we call conventional oil reservoirs, and right, what we call shale oil reservoirs or unconventional reservoirs. Okay. So, like that, right, what I'm showing you here happens to be photographs of, like that across the top, right, you'll see that across the top you'll see a heading, a reservoir type, okay, and that it'll show over on the right-hand side conventional, it'll show over on that'll show on my right-hand side, I apologize, it'll show on your left-hand side, conventional will show on your right-hand side, unconventional. What I'm trying to tell you is this: that if you take a look at the photograph, that when we cut it into thin slices, right, we will often fill it with plastic, okay, like that, and that plastic will often color blue, and right, that'll show the pore space in which oil is stored, okay. So thereby, like that, over in these photos at the right-hand side, if you can see the pore space. Okay, that is what we would call a conventional reservoir. A large pores store oil. Okay, that as we start to go across as far as reservoir types, you will see that there is still a blue. Okay, but the size of the pores are actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Right. As we start to go through this spectrum, right, we go from what we call conventional to tight, to unconventional. And that I can tell you is that the two photos on the far right-hand side for you guys also have pores in them, okay, but they can't be seen because they're so tiny, okay, that we got to see them with high-powered microscopes, okay. So to actually show you what a thin section is, look that I have one here. And that this one, this one isn't colored blue, but it happens to be a thin slice. Okay, that can pass that around. That is right. That's a porous rock. It's about what, right? What is the porosity? About 20%. Yeah. Okay. So that it's porous. Like that. This would qualify as what, a tight sandstone reservoir. So thereby that'd probably fit in here somewhere. Okay. But still, like that. The point of that is just to show you what these are. Okay. How we get the photos. But that, the point of the photo is to convey this sense. Large holes, conventional. Smaller holes, tight. Extremely small holes, unconventional. Okay. Then like that on the second scalar across. Okay, like that. Right back when the oil industry first got going and all this stuff. Right, we were fortunate enough to find lots of conventional. Right. And like that, and thereby that they didn't have to do much to actually complete the wells, and like that, and often the wells would flow on their own. Okay, as we start to go into the tighter realm, we started to stimulate the wells. Okay, and stimulation would take stimulation will often take the place of a small scale fracturing. Okay. And what the fraction does is opens up the rock a layer a bit, that he'll talk to us in a moment, and lets the pores follow a path back to the pipe. Okay, as we go to these extremely tiny pore systems, okay, extremely small stuff, it takes larger fracs. Okay, I have put. No, that I have it on here. Our system here, or our type of rock here, we think is in this space. Okay, so that I'll say it now, that it isn't what you are hearing as being a shale gas type of stimulation system. It isn't that small of a hole. Okay, So, so thereby we don't need to stimulate it as hard, if you wish, okay? But it's important to sort of take the pitch away. Large holes, conventional, smaller holes, tight, extremely tiny holes, okay? Right, then that's what this is for, all right? Okay. So right now we'll talk about the steps for completion. All right? Please.
Thank you. So to start off, when I grew up on a farm, and I didn't tell anybody that today, but my dad used to tell me because we had some wells close to our farm. Yes, Craig?
Sorry, we should do groundwater after the wells.
It's okay.
I apologize.
So I used to imagine that underground there was lakes, and these lakes contained the oil and the gas. So then I went to school, and then I got a job, and then I learned that that wasn't the case. And so that's just a little story of what some people think is going on under the ground. What I'm going to explain to you today is some of the steps we take, some of the things we look for, and some of the processes that we take. A lot of them are very technical, so that we understand what we're doing underneath the ground, so that we can do it safely, we can do it environmentally friendly. And not only underground, we can do our processes such that on the surface they're safe, and they take care and attention with everything we do. So hydraulic fracturing is only one part of completion. So I'm going to go through this, but I'm also going to explain a few other steps that we take as part of the completion and testing operation. So when the drillers are done drilling their well, the drilling rig moves.